The internet has become increasingly concentrated, less open, and growingly hostile to innovation and entrepreneurship.
Congress is putting big tech in the hot seat during a hearing convened by the House Antitrust Panel this week. Lawmakers question whether Facebook, Amazon, Google, and Apple are allowing consumers enough options or whether they are, in fact, stifling competition.
Some of these issues, of course, have been a major focus for some of the 2020 Democratic presidential candidates. Senator Elizabeth Warren has called for the breakup of these tech giants, and while Kamala Harris has called tech a utility which needs to be regulated. Joining us with some insight on this is the Congressman David Cicilline of Rhode Island. He's the chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, serves on the House Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, sir, you just had these big hearings, got a lot of attention in Washington and in Silicon Valley. What are the main takeaways that we've learned about these technology companies and whether we need to break them up right now or not?
Well, this hearing was part of a larger investigation launched by the Judiciary Committee and led by the Antitrust Subcommittee that I head to really look at the digital marketplace broadly. There's tremendous concentration of these large technology companies, and we're looking at a whole range of issues. Their market dominance, whether they're engaged in anti-competitive behavior, what the impact is on innovation and entrepreneurship and startups, whether they are engaging in discriminatory behavior, favoring their own products and services over others. So we're in the midst of this investigation.
Which
but I think
Amazon is almost definitely doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. One of the kind of disappointing parts of the hearing was when the witness from Amazon said, "Oh, we collect this data from individuals, but we don't really use it to guide our decisions about our private label products." We know that's not true. They collect data, they see what a hot item is, they then produce the same replica, and they roll that out and they prioritize Amazon and then deprioritize the seller. And so that has a real impact on small business, has an impact on innovation, entrepreneurship. So look, this market is not working. Many of these big tech companies are operating like monopolies. You think of Facebook, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at kind of the whole range of issues. Do we need to modernize our antitrust statutes? Do we need to create new regulations? Do we need to provide more resources to our antitrust enforcers? But we need to get this market working right. They have tremendous power in the marketplace. The impact on journalism is significant, the impact on startups. So this is a really broad investigation. At the end of it, we'll have a set of recommendations, a final report, probably certainly some legislation, maybe some regulatory proposals, and some other things.
Well, and part of the problem with antitrust, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding this, but based on current judicial precedent, basically to use antitrust enforcement, you have to prove that consumers are being hurt, right? That prices are being, there's price collusion or something that's causing prices to go up. And in the case of Amazon, in the case of Facebook, in the case of Google, right, it's not consumers that are directly being hurt, at least in their pocketbook. So how do you deal with that? You deal with that with new regulation? What do you do?
I mean, there's currently a very narrow definition of consumer welfare. You're right, and it relates really to price. And what I think we have to look at is what is the impact on consumers and workers more broadly. People think, oh, I'm using these services, they're free. They're not really free. You're paying them with your attention and with your data. And so looking at what is the impact when your products you don't have the same range of choices because they're prioritizing an Amazon product over a non-Amazon product and you don't really know that. And what is the impact on entrepreneurship when, we want to make room for the next Facebook, the next Amazon, the next startup. And the market dominance of these platforms is so significant that it's making it very difficult for new entrants into the market. So we have to, part of this investigation is also going to be an opportunity to really educate the American people as to why this matters, why it matters in their daily lives, why this economic concentration is not good, why competition is so important.
One thing, Congressman, Senator Josh Hawley has been an opponent of big tech on the right. He's proposed removing the Section 230 privileges that Facebook and Google enjoy. Now, for those who don't understand, basically means that they're treated as platforms, not publishers. They're not liable for the stuff on their platform, which makes it a huge benefit and regulatory arbitrage that a lot of people say. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think it's a really big problem. That is the use of these platforms to disseminate false information with no liability from the company.
Right.
On the other hand, if you get rid of 230 completely, you'll end these platforms completely. You can't actually function when you think about the volume of stuff that is posted for compliance. So even if you wanted them to be really good curators of the content on their platforms, it's almost impossible to do it. And the other problem is, do you actually want a private company deciding, Facebook, for example, 2.7 billion users, do we really want Facebook to decide what we get to see?
Right.
So I think these are
Aren't
really,
they already, though?
in many ways they are, but
Yeah.
but in a lot of ways, these are easy problems to identify. They're harder problems to solve,
For sure.
which is why this investigation is designed to bring in the best data, the most current information, the best technologists in the country who have been thinking about these issues for a long time, so that we can shape solutions that actually make sense. But these are hard issues.
So what lessons have you taken away from the Microsoft suit of the 1990s? Because there's a lot of evidence that the suit itself basically stopped Microsoft from pursuing monopolistic behavior. So what are the lessons that you are? I mean, you have very
Yeah.
big footsteps that you're following.
You're absolutely right,
Yeah.
and that's the last major monopolization case
Yes.
that we've really had in this country in a serious way. And I think what we've learned is antitrust requires vigorous enforcement, and the threat of antitrust actions can change the behavior of people in the marketplace. And we have an opportunity, I think, to really look at. I think what happened is, these are great American companies, and when they were first developed, the internet was providing all these new services and conveniences and connecting people. There was a lot of excitement about it, a lot of innovation around it, and people sort of sat back and said, just let it happen, without fully appreciating what the downside was with an unregulated market dominance being developed by these companies. And I think the privacy issues and the breaches that we've seen, some of the misuse of data, what happened in the 2016 presidential election, they've all now reminded us of some of the dangers that lurk out there. We want these companies to survive and prosper and function, but we want to do it in a marketplace that works and where there's real competition, so that consumers' privacy can be respected, that people have control over their data, that if they don't like a platform, they can move. So we want interoperability and portability. So there are a lot of things we can learn from what the European Union has done, what the state of California has done, that I think can bring some competition back into this market.
Are there other industries where you have concerns, monopoly and antitrust concerns? Because you look at something like Big Ag, they've really put pressure on farmers' consolidation in that industry. Are there other avenues that Democrats?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first hearings we did was in the healthcare area, hospital consolidations, the impact on big pharma and prescription drug prices. So there are a number of areas we have really unprecedented concentration in our economy, maybe the most concentration we've had since the 1920s. This is very problematic for consumers. It's why Democrats focused on getting the economy to work for ordinary folks. There's been tremendous growth of wealth at the very top, partly as a result of this economic concentration, but working folks have not seen a raise in a very long time. Today, we'll actually raise the minimum wage for the first time in almost a decade. So our economy is not working right as a result of this market concentration. And frankly, there hasn't been a lot of good antitrust enforcement in many, for a very long time.
And so another thing I want to get into with is Facebook in particular. They've proposed cryptocurrency called Libra. I know there's some discussion about that in the last couple of days. What is your view in allowing a technology company like Facebook to pursue a cryptocurrency that, with the stated goal of disrupting the global reserve currency?
Yeah. I think based on the behavior of Facebook and their inability to even comply with consent decrees and their pretty significant disregard for the privacy interests of the consumers and for the ability and allowing data to be misused that belongs to their customers and users, I think I have a lot of concern about that proposal. I think many members of Congress do as well.
Yeah. And what are the public's concerns right now? You said part of the goal is to educate the public. Do people see this as a problem or not really yet?
I think, people are concerned about privacy. They're concerned about their data being used without their permission. They're concerned about whether or not it's disadvantaging small businesses and entrepreneurs in their communities, the impact on innovation. So we'll look at all of those issues. But part of it is to explain to people, look, these are companies that are popular, that provide services you like, that's okay. But we want the marketplace to work properly so we can make room for the next Facebook or the next Amazon or the next Google. And right now, these platforms, particularly Google, they act as walled gardens where it makes it very difficult for new entrants into the marketplace to compete. And that's where you get innovation. A company just innovating itself, like philanthropy, like we'll do it because we want to, is not how it works. They innovate because of competition. If they have no competition, the incentive to innovate and come up with new ideas and new products decreases significantly.
That's a great point. So we also wanted to talk to you a little bit about immigration, what's going on in the House. You're obviously a member of the House Judiciary Committee. So you have two things on your plate. What are the next steps on the immigration front, particularly with these detention facilities and maybe changes to asylum law?
We will pass next week a new set of proposals that will create standards for the treatment of individuals who are in custody. You don't think you would need to actually do that. You think as a country we would recognize that if we take people into custody, we have an obligation to make sure that they are treated humanely and have access to clean water and toothbrushes and bathrooms. But I've been to the border twice. Many of my colleagues have been as well. Very disturbed at the conditions in which people are being held and the separation of children from their families. So we are passed 2 pieces of legislation that will ensure that people who are in custody are treated properly. We've passed the DREAM Act already and temporary protective status for refugees. I think we will do a comprehensive immigration bill to fix our broken immigration system that will create a pathway to citizenship for undocumented people in this country. But we want, as Democrats, we want to secure the borders of our country. We want to do it in a way which reflects our values. And I think what we're seeing at the border right now, this idea of taking children from their parents, is un-American. It's not who we are as a country. The asylum and refugee system is the crown jewel of our immigration system. It's on our Statue of Liberty. when people are fleeing violence and war and famine and natural disasters, we open our arms and we welcome them. We have a process, a law that says if you have a legitimate reason to seek asylum, it'll be adjudicated, you'll get to stay. If not, you'll be sent back. We should be proud of that. And the fact that we have to continue to make investments in this part of the world to help reduce the flow of migration, addressing the underlying problems in Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and we have to do that. The president cut funding for that, which is only going to make the problem worse. So it's a complicated question. There's a lot of different components to it, but we have a responsibility to address this in a humanitarian way, in a way that reflects our values.
Congressman, last thing that we wanted to get your thoughts on, former Special Counsel Robert Mueller is coming to testify. What do you want to ask him? You've heard about that? Yeah, newsflash. What do you want to ask him?
This is going to be an opportunity for the American people to hear, many people for the first time, what is in the Mueller report. Mr. Mueller conducted this investigation for 22 months. Most people haven't read it. Obviously, I did as a member of the committee. But it will be the first time the American people are going to learn that the President of the United States directed the White House counsel to fire the special counsel and end the investigation. Then the President directed Don McGahn to lie about it and to actually prepare a document to reflect that lie.
And do you view these as impeachable offenses?
Absolutely. There are 5 specific instances of obstruction of justice where all the elements are met. This will be the time for Mr. Mueller to kind of lay that out to the American people, to tell him the judgments he made, the evidence he uncovered, and the conduct of the president at issue. And I think it's going to be a very sobering hearing. I think it will really begin to help people understand the gravity of the president's conduct.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, sir. We appreciate it.
We appreciate it. Thank you. We'll have more Rising right after this.